For the end of Unix Epoch is nigh! Come, save your souls and your software from the 32-bit original sin! Repent! For the end of Unix Epoch is nigh! It is coming, you have but 25 years to live! Repent! For the end of the Unix Epoch is nigh! Save your souls from the original 32-bit sin! Save your souls and your software today, good people! Good friends, I have come to spread the good news. Not quite that holy. So, I have to, my equipment, I'm not sure with the reverse magnetic field here down under whether it's going to work. I need 2 volunteers from the audience. Come up. Hello, how conductive are you? Okay. Here's my other one. You see behind the curtain. Another volunteer? Come, let the holiness flow through you. All right. Hold on! Jeez. Up, left, feeling. Said, okay, let's see if this works.
Are they supposed to tingle?
It's like that shampoo. Lets you know it's working. Yes. Okay.
Should they be feeling pain?
Ready?
Any moment.
Yes! Success. You can put them down very slowly. Okay. Good.
Is that it?
That's it, except that I can't see my notes now. So let us take a peek behind the curtain. Oops. Whoops, what did I just do? I'll just really turn around and thought I had that prepared so well. Oh well, theatrics. Yes, excellent. Oh, that's not it. Yes. Brothers and sisters, I am here to ask you one question. Are you ready for the end of the world? Can I get an amen? Amen. Can I get a 200 okay? 200. I'm here as your soul and your software ready for the end of the world. Now you're saying to yourself, Schwern, the world ends all the time. What do I have to worry about? The world ended in the year 2000. Nobody noticed. If you believe Jeff, the IP apocalypse is already upon us. Nobody noticed. If you believe the Mayans, the world ended a few months ago. Nobody noticed. But last I heard, my computer doesn't run on a Mayan calendar. My computer runs on the most holy Unix calendar, ticking off seconds since the beginning of time. And when did time begin, you may ask?
On my birthday.
You're crazy, but I am. Thursday, January 1st, midnight 1970, the start of the Unix age, all at one time, 32 bits for all time. And scientists agree, ticking away second after second. We have, in their infinite wisdom, our lords of the labs gave us 2,147,483,5 537 seconds, that is all, plus 100. That is the end of time. Bell Labs, it's all they felt that we needed, and who are we to question their wisdom? The labs work in mysterious ways. This is the end. This is the end of all time. Our original 32-bit sin, which we must wash away today in this room. And you may be thinking, Schwern, by that time, I'll be retired. But that won't happen, not because you'll be dead or because you'll be out of money, but because your bank will think you haven't been born yet. Why? Because when the end of the world comes, we'll start all over again in 1901. We'll be reborn, and our flying cars will become no cars. The future will become the past. You might think, hey, there's still 25 years to go. We can wipe away that 32-bit sin with 64-bit machines. What about all the protocols? What about all the databases? What about the binary formats and the JPEGs and the MySQLs? Will they carry the original 32-bit sin at the end of time? Think about the financial crisis. Caused by a housing bubble. A lot of people get 30-year mortgages, and the housing bubble burst in 2008. Think about it. Now you might say, Schwern, this is ridiculous because this is all a plot on the part of the lizard people to take over the world. I say, no! Because as we know, they already have, you fools! The original 32-bit sin is of our own making. And then there's Mars! The Martian day is 24 hours and 40 minutes long. What will happen to the Martians in 2038? If you think, I'll go to Mars, I'll be safe from the original 32-bit sin. No. The Martian year may be longer, but the same number of seconds pass. Your computers will all fail at the same time as we do. Unless the Martians increase the length of a second by 2.7%, and then you get a little more time. But what time zone are the Martians using? Well, we just decided that a crater on Mars, Area 0, is going to be the prime meridian. How ethnocentric of us. And every time we drop a new probe on Mars, we declare a new time zone. The Mars Pathfinder is at area parent time, 2 hours and 13 minutes, and Spirit landed at area mean time, plus 11 hours and 4 seconds. It's already becoming crazy. We haven't even stepped foot on that planet yet. How will the future Martians judge us for making such a mess of their time? But I'm here to spread the good news. There is hope. You can save your souls and your software from the original 32-bit sin. And when the glorious rapture at the end of time crashes the heathen computers, we will be safe. Can I get an exit code 0? Exit code 0. Is there someone in the audience whose devices would like to be saved? Yes, sir! Come down! Where is your device, sir? How much do you value this device, sir?
Yeah, someone else or something.
I'll do a mass blessing. Lords of the labs, save the sitting software in this good and righteous audience, break their bits and twain so that 2 become 4 and 32 becomes 64. Demons of the past, away now and forever to the end of time. End of file. So that concludes the crazy portion of the talk. Y'all are timid. Nobody wanted to. Let's pull up. the other half of the talk. There we go. Okay, so there is actually serious content here. Yeah. So I want to talk to you about J.R. Stockton's critical and significant dates. This is an amazing list. I love it so much. It's not about your dating history, but it's about time and date values past and the future from the beginning of the universe, generally considered to be a bad idea, to the beginning of the Unix epoch, where Unix counts the number of seconds since 1970, to the end of the world, and all the crazy exceptions in between. So what's the problem? And it turns out that in dating, size matters. So here's an example of getting the end of time in Perl. We've got 2 to the 31 minus 1, and that comes out as the end of the world. You add them simple, just add 1 to that. And what happens on a 32-bit machine? Well, at the time I wrote this talk 5 years ago, this is what would happen. Uh-oh, 1901. Whoops, gone from flying car to no car. So normally, high-level programming lets us forget that we're running hard software on actual silicon. And this is, the hardware has its limits. And if you ask a C programmer, they'll say something like, oh, it's because of 32-bit unsigned double floating point static registers, or something like that. But languages, high-level languages, are supposed to shield us from all that, but sometimes they don't. And of course, what's going on here is that a 32-bit signed integer only has 31 bits for the integer and 1 for the sign, so it can store from 2 billion and change to negative 2 billion and change. It's actually minus 1. And we go from that to, oh, right, sorry. We're not reading my own talk. So in 2038, 32-bit signed Unix time fails, because that's all that a 32-bit integer can hold. But if we up it to 64 bits, well, now we get to the year, now we have the year 292 billion problem. And that's when 64-bit signed time fails. If we up it to 128 bits, we have the 5 non-alien problem. If we go to 256 bits, we have the 1.8 million Vingit-alien problem. And then finally, there are only 2 to the 80th particles in the universe. So in the year 2 to the 10th, the 80th is now impossible to write the year. This is a hard limit. But fortunately, at 1 to the 36, the universe will decay, theoretically. And we don't have to worry about the year 1.8 million Vingit-alien problem. Now, a Portland programmer, Keith Lobstrom, inventor of the Lobstrom launch loop, so actual rocket scientist, has the complete solution. He said, why are you storing time in seconds? You should be storing time in the only sensible unit, the Planck time. So it turns out that you can store 1 to the 36 years in about 266 bits, and then you're done with this problem forever. You don't have to hear about it ever again. Get on that. So the Planck time unit since 1970, that's the approximate number that we've gone through. Don't be tempted to use 256 bits, or else you fall afoul of the year 989. Yes, that problem. And as Keith points out, the programmer will have a lot of accumulated code to fix. So, oddly enough, when the 2038 problem started to come up in Perl, there were some arguments on the Perl development list about what to do about it. And it was kind of split between the native Perl programmers who don't really know C, and the C programmers who know Perl. And the C programmers said, well, the GM time function, the function that says, hey, give me the date in GMT, internally uses the time t C structure. And time t is a signed 32-bit integer, right, on a 32-bit machine. And signed 32-bit numbers overflow it to the 31st, right? And, this and then that. So therefore, in their mind, this made perfect sense. You got exactly what you asked for, right? You put in a 32-bit integer and you overflowed it and you get an old time. What's the problem? I'm not kidding. People argued this. But this is Perl, and Perl is supposed to do what I mean, and I'm a Perl programmer. And we don't care about 32-bit signed double floating point static registers, and more importantly, my clients don't care. So when they get 1901, I can't say it's because of 32-bit signed double floating point registers and expect them to go, oh yes, okay, I understand that's why we can't sell any products today. No, they go, you're fired! So a number is a number. That's the deal that most languages these days sell us. A number is a number is a number. I don't really care how it's represented internally, just figure it out. So we had to fix this. So we had to fix this. I had to fix this. So why do you care, right? As I said, it's 25 years to go. In 25 years, you'll be, well, I can only hope I look that good in 25 years. You'll probably be retired, and I'll be eligible for the AARP, which doesn't make any sense to you, American Retirement Program. But stuff happens in the future. Right now, stuff happens in the future. And this might seem obvious, but a lot of people pretend it doesn't. For example, anybody here have a 30-year mortgage? Raise your hand. Yeah, sorry. Perhaps you want to construct some sort of death clock. I plan on living beyond 2038. And also stuff happens in the past because odds are if you have problems with 2038, you have problems with dates before 1901 or even before 1970. Here are some wonderful photographs of Pittsburgh in 1941, in 1927, 1938. And it turns out that apparently a few years ago, Picasso wouldn't understand a photograph that had a date timestamp on it before 1970. Whoops. And of course, this is, most important date in my life. I was born. But some people weren't born before 1970. Maybe you'd like computers to know that. Windows cannot handle negative times. At least it couldn't at the time I wrote this. The other problem is people are a little slow to upgrade. So we know that people are still using Perl 581, and this is released 10 years ago. So we've got a 10-year upgrade cycle in Perl, or more. It's getting longer. The more critical the application, the more slower the upgrade cycle, especially the more money that the company has, the slower the upgrade cycle it seems to be. So you kind of do the math, and you go, well, by the time they upgrade software that they're running today, we're only going to have 15 years to go, and the problem is going to get even worse. I found a great one about one of the first major failures to 2038 was AOL, who was storing. They were storing their user data in their database, and they had no way of saying never expire this. So the programmer just said, oh, well, it'll just expire in 30 years. 2008 rolls around, and their system crashes because all of a sudden they've got negative dates in their system and everything goes to pot. And they probably fixed it by just hard coding 2038 in it, and then it'll all fail later on. But stuff is already starting to fail because of this. So that's the problem. And before we look at solutions, I want to talk about what's not a solution, because a lot of people think that they have things that are solutions. Blame the user, that's the good one. Just say you use a 32-bit integer, you're wrong. No, only C programmers think this is a feature. Let's all upgrade to 64-bit processors. That actually is working for the most part to solve the problem for the home user, because our cycle is maybe 3-5 years for stuff. But that's not what's scary. It's the embedded systems that nobody thinks about. It's the factories, it's your car, it's your TV, it's your heating and air conditioning system, all quietly ticking away, doing its job with a computer you don't even know about. That's probably not even 32-bit until time runs out, and then who knows what happens when all of a sudden it thinks it's the past. We already had a bunch of, when daylight savings times rules change, there are problems with factories melting down because suddenly it's the past and it doesn't know to shut itself off and overheats and spills everywhere. So really what saying let's all upgrade to 64-bit is saying is this. There's also another problem. Let's talk about the burning sky orb. You guys have a lot of it down here. So we really have two types of time. On the one sort of time, the local time is meant to track the burning sky orb, although we do it in a crazy manner. The other one says, fuck the sun, UTC, and we don't have to worry about it. But whether you like it or not, time zones are really important. And time zones are insane, and time zones are political. Time zones change over time, and then there's daylight savings time, which is its own bucket of suck. All this information is located in your operating system's time zone database, probably held together by the people who do the Olson time zone database. If you ever get a chance to read it, it's funny. They have lots and lots of comments about why things are certain ways and the historical versions of it. So if you're any interest in this sort of thing, it's great. So it's your operating system time zone database. It gets updated with the operating system. Unfortunately, there is no portable API to the operating system time zone database. And by portable, I mean, not Fedora and Debian. I realize I'm at a Linux conference. I mean the Perl idea of portable, which is Windows, Linux, HPUX, VMS, every operating system you can think of. There's no agreed upon location for it. Some languages and programs work around this by shipping their own copy of the time zone database, and now you have two problems. Because it's bad enough when you have one time zone database you have to update. Now when you have, say, 6 of them, you don't even know where they are or what has them. It gets worse because daylight savings time, as I mentioned, is horrifying. So it was originally introduced as a joke by Benjamin Franklin in 1784 to save money on candles. Now let's fast forward to 2005, the Energy Policy Act of 2005 in the United States. Let's change daylight savings time by a few weeks to save energy. So Benjamin Franklin was right. Oh my God, they just didn't understand. But they gave us 1 year to update all the time zone databases. 1 year. And then they gave themselves 9 months to test its impact. And then they said, oh, we can put it all right back if we want to. Anytime we want. The scramble, at least in the US, to get all the time zone databases updated was pretty bad. But I can't imagine, it's bad enough when you have one, but when you have 6, 7, 10, 12, it's just going to get worse. So to fix this problem, you need something that does this. It handles time zones, which knocks out a lot of libraries out there. It knocks out like libty, it knocks out a whole lot of stuff. Has to use a system time zone database. It has to be portable, and when I say portable, I mean ANSI C89. Maybe ISO 90, maybe. But that's what I mean by portable. It's got to have, in my case, I'd have a compatible license with Perl, but anybody else. I mean, basically it has to have a compatible license with everything, which pretty much means MIT, or three-letter BSD. And it has to be, has an interface compatible with the existing time.t structures, because that's what everybody is kind of using under the hood. Nothing. There was nothing out there at the time. This was about 5 years ago. Nothing. So it seems impossible, except I lied. I lied about a little part. There is a way, there is an interface to the system time zone database. It just sucks. It's that. Yeah. C89 has 2 functions that can talk to the time zone database, and this is the wedge that I used to fix this problem of 64-bit time on 32-bit machines with time zone compatibility. So basically, local time, you give it the epoch, number of seconds, and it spits back the date, the minutes, hours, seconds, day, month, year. And then NK time does the reverse, which is a much harder algorithm. You give it a date, and it spits back the Unix time. Incidentally, because of time zone shifts, sometimes one date can have 2 epoch times associated with it, because sometimes there can be, say, 2 1 a.m.s on a given day when the clock falls back. It's fun to test, let me tell you. So, how do we do it? So here's what I did. First step, write a 64-bit GM time. This turns out to be pretty easy. It's just a bunch of math. There's no time zones to worry about. It's easy, because writing ANSI C89 as a non-C programmer is very hard. But if strings aren't involved, it's fine, and there aren't many strings involved in that, so that wasn't too bad. I found an interesting one. So in the course of testing this, I of course needed testing numbers against for various dates and times, everything else, and I discovered so many bugs in people's 64-bit implementations of time. The best one was this. This was on OS X 10.6. So GM time, I said, it's simple. There's no database, it's just math, it's easy. How do you screw this up? So somewhere in the year negative 2,235,476, because you got to make sure it goes in both directions, you added, from December 30th, you added 1 second and suddenly it's January 1st. I can't imagine what combination of circumstances led to this bug. How?
Shorter that year.
Yeah, years were shorter back then. And it appears nowhere else. Nowhere else. It's just this one specific spot. And it doesn't correspond to any number of seconds, no power of 2. I have no idea. No idea. I reported it as a bug and it seemed to have gotten fixed. The other one, this one, I think again on OS X, and I develop on OS X, so I'm going to find all the best ones there. That would just hang. For no reason I could discern, and it made it really hard to test the possible ranges of, when your functions no longer return true or false, they just stop. And in C, it's really difficult to do alarms and stuff in a portable manner. Again, that number doesn't correspond to anything, that date doesn't correspond to anything that has any significance. I have no idea how you would write that bug. It would drive me crazy. I've had all sorts of other things. HPUX claimed to be 64-bit, but it would fail at 47 bits reliably. So basically I found a few, in the end I tested a lot of operating systems. And at the time, about 5 years ago, if it said it was 64-bit, what you could really rely on was 47 bits of time, which is a lot. I think it gets you out of something like 292 million. It's not bad for most purposes. If you're going further than that, you really shouldn't be using the system time library. It's kind of silly, or time zones. Speaking of dates way in the past, found out so many fun things about this. Operating systems do different things when you go way in the past with time zones. And I had a bunch of bugs in my tests where I would run them on some machines and I'd be like, okay, this is Europe-London time zone, this is Europe-Paris. They're in the same time zone, they should be the same. And then they would, somewhere in the past, they would diverge by like 12 minutes. I'm like, what? So it turns out that some systems, a lot of Linux systems, will, when you're before time zones in history, it'll start to use solar noon in that particular city, which is really clever. Okay, so step 2. So before we can talk about step 2, let's talk about calendars. Crazy making calendars. Before we talk about calendars, let's talk about Julius Caesar. So the calendar we think of as the Julian calendar introduced into the West in 46 BC by Julius Caesar. It estimates that a year is about 365 and a quarter days. It introduces the idea of a leap year, but it's slightly wrong. But it's kind of close to what we use. So looking at a calendar, there's 2 very important attributes to understand about a calendar. Really, there's only 2 things you need to know about a calendar. What weekday is the 1st of January? What day does it start on? So for example, 2004 starts on Thursday, and it kind of has a, but if it's a leap year, it's different. So you have to also know if it's a leap year. If you know these 2 things about a calendar year, you have what's called an infinite calendar. So you can represent, all time just by having a calendar that has, the 14 different ones. So there's 7 possible starting days. There's a leap year every 24 years. So the Julian calendar has a 28-year cycle. Every 28 years, it just repeats itself from the point of view of the calendar stuff. And you can exploit that. So this is the starting day, and then there's the days going on from it. So given any year on the Julian calendar, you can add or subtract 28 years to get the same calendar year. Aha! Well, we can map future dates, which local time can't handle, into the past to ones that they do, that local time can handle. And you can map past dates to ones that are in the safe range, which is 1970 to 2038. And then once you do that, you can now do some clever things, and well, I'll show you the algorithm later. But that's the important thing. Aha, we can map these dates into our safe range from the past and from the future. But we don't use the Julian calendar, otherwise we'd be 2 weeks ahead of the sun. We use the Gregorian calendar. This calendar has more complex leap year rules. How many people were around in the year 2000 programming? How many people got the leap year wrong at some point and forgot to add in the mod by 100? Yes. It changes the rules for leap years, so effectively we now have a 400-year cycle. And that's not going to work. So we can fake it. So after a lot of staring at this crazy making, taking a look at the Julian calendar cycle, again representing the first day for every year. The green ones are all leap years. So for example, here's 2099. It starts on a Friday. Yeah. And then here's 2011, which is not a leap year. Right. And then where would 2001 go? So non-leap years only add 1 normally, so you go from 5 to 6. So there it is. So you would jump from 5 to 6, 5, 6. And you can kind of start to see that there's a progression there. You can just kind of shift it over 1 and down. And it turns out that if you just add 16 to the year and adjust for certain exceptional century things that I won't get into, it works. You now have your cycle back. So I can go from 5 to 6 and 3 to 4 and 1 to 2. And so on and so forth. The important thing is I've got that cycle back. And now it works inside the 28-year cycle. As like I said, there's a little more numerology. If you want to read the source code, you can read the source code. It's not too bad. So here's the basic algorithm that I'm using to allow 64-bit time on 32-bit machines. You get the date in Greenwich Mean Time. So that's with the rewritten 64-bit time function. And then you say, okay, what's that year? So let's say that's in 2011. To 2100. You map that year back to something safe with the algorithm that I just described, right? You get the time for that date, so you run it through time GM, which is just reverses it. So you take the time and you put it in that date. So now we know that the epoch time for the time that we want, but inside our safe range. And then you basically say, okay, for that time, localize it. Give me the local time zone date for that. And you just stick the year back on it, the original year. So you've tricked the computer into giving you the time zone offset for a time way in the future by shifting the year, running it through the time zone database, shifting the year back. There's some issues around the new year. There's some issues to make sure that the time zone doesn't span a year back and forth, but that's the basic algorithm. The more complicated algorithm accounts for all that. How well does this work? Time zones are always dicey because they're political and they change over time. Past rules become less accurate and so on and so forth. At worst, when it really comes down to it, worst, you're going to be off by an hour or 2. British double summertime is a pain in the ass because it all changed right at about 1971. So a lot of these things start to map to this 2-hour shift in time. So I think the worst I've ever seen is 2 hours off. And that's better than being off by 138 years. Would you agree? I wrote this all, rather than just patch it into Perl, I wrote this as a portable 64-bit clean the replacement for the POSIX time.h library, and dropped it into Perl. So Perl has been running this for about 5 years. So if you have any doubts, it's been running in production for a while. It works pretty well. It also does some tricks to basically probe your existing system time and decide how safe the system time range is and use that. So basically if it detects, oh, you're a 64-bit machine, I'm just going to not use any of the shenanigans and I'm going to just pass straight through to your real system code. So there's no, for a 64-bit machine, there's no problem on this. If you're using one of those broken machines that claims it as 64-bit, but is actually 47-bit, it'll detect that. So it'll use a wide range, and then it'll, once it gets beyond that, it'll start to use the trick again. There's been basically no problems with it in Perl. You can get it here on GitHub. So interesting thing is, by making it generic, now you can fix basically any C program, and that includes most programming languages and databases. So we fixed Perl. This has been, as I said, has been live for years. Python could be fixed. Python has some problems with 2038. Ruby has some problems with 2038. I don't know anybody else. Now, so when you, I'm going to pause for a second because I've just been talking at 10 minutes left. Any questions or comments at this point? Yeah.